so much for the lead-in, Dominic. That was truly an experience. I want to say just, I think I speak for all of us here when I say it's how good it is to be back in Dubai. Thanks to this amazing event that is Dubai Watch Week and of course the Siddiqui family, especially for those of us who have been in Europe enjoying the weather that's been over there and then coming here and being in the sunshine and enjoying our horological moment in the sun together as friends, as a community. I'm your friendly neighborhood moderator, Suzanne, and these are my panelists. I would like to introduce them as Christine Hutter, the CEO of Moritz Grossman. We have a friend waiting in the wings. We have in the middle right here, Fabrizio Buonamassa, who is the creative powerhouse, and I do not use this word lightly, of Bvlgari. He creates with his mind, and we see them on our wrists, and I'm not going to embarrass him anymore. And I see our friend Aldis. Hi, Aldis, how's it going? Where are you right now? What time is it for you? Because you're halfway across the world, aren't you?
I am indeed. I'm in New York right now, and it is 3 a.m., so very early for me.
Well, this is truly an international event, so I just wanted to go very quickly. We won't keep you any longer than necessary. We know you need your beauty sleep. It's important for all of us to keep those useful, beautiful looks. We are here to talk about what pan mechanism means to us. And this, obviously, is not really a term that, like, I'm sure one of you, most of you, when you came to see this event, you were like, pan mechanism, what is that? And just to kind of refresh everyone's memory on what we're going to be discussing here, reading directly from the Dubai Watch Week website, which very, very beautiful and complete, and you should definitely check it out. The future of gendered watches in watchmaking. Will watches eventually be completely abolished from having any gender at all in this pan day and age? Or will the need for male-female differentiation prevail as per traditional views regarding Venus versus Mars, human nature, etc.? So before we dive into the discussion proper, maybe we should do a little round. I know I've introduced you three very, very quickly, but please tell us a bit more about the kind of perspectives that you'll be bringing, how you will be presenting your views, and what kind of experience you have of this subject in your work, in your life, in the discussion that we'll be having very, very soon. Christine, should we start with you? Tell us a bit more about what you do at Moritz Grossman.
We can do it, thank you. First of all, I also would like to welcome everybody, and Aldis. Hello.
Hey, Christine. Good
we
to
really
see you
miss
again.
you here.
I wish I was out there.
So, if I go back to Moritz Grossman and to talk about genderless watches or pen mechanism, and or should I introduce myself at first?
Tell us a bit more about Moritz Grossman. What kind of watches do we see from there, and what kind of perspective that you'll be bringing to the?
Okay, so Moritz Grossman, we are an independent company established in 13 years ago in 2008, but we have a history which goes back to the 19th century of German watchmaking. So as we started, it was clear, or in my mind, we have to take tradition points of Moritz Grossman to bring it into the movement, and we really want to set up a real manufactory. So we do construction of the movement, design of the movement, prototyping, everything by our own. And as we started, it was clear we have to bring the former watchmaking into the new wristwatches. But as we designed, I never thought about to design a watch for men or to design a watch for a woman or for somebody else. So it's clear, so you would like to create something really very special, and we do it more in a classical way. And I think our topic is not to touch a gender. Our topic is more to touch the product. And what we would like to reach is if somebody is really a little bit involved in mechanism and watchmaking and does this like, what we would like to do is really to touch everybody's heart. Because if you sell luxury timepieces, it's more or less a dream what you buy. Nobody does need a watch anymore. You have your iPhone and you can see the time really whenever you want. But to create something special in a mechanic way, in a very high quality way, it should be for everybody.
Absolutely. And actually, one of the reasons why I'm so glad you're on this panel discussion, Christine, is that you're one of the few strong women in positions of power in this industry, and I think you bring a really unique perspective. Fabrizio, on to you. It's your turn in the spotlight. I'm going to give you some heat at the moment. Now, the company that you work with and that you create for Bvlgari, they take a slightly different approach to design, I would say, and it's quite strongly identifiable, the products, as being either very masculine or very feminine. And do you follow that sort of categorization, that masculine things are for men and feminine things are for women?
Ciao a tutti, first of all. Bvlgari is a jewelry brand. Mm-hmm. We make some, let me say, interesting and unique timepieces, but we are mostly a ladies brand because we make our main business is to make jewels. And this is the history of the brand. This is a part of our DNA, but we are very well known even for a Bvlgari watch, for example, that is it's a unisex watch, let me say. It's a lot of men, a lot of women wear the Bvlgari watch since the 70s. Today, we are very well known for the Finissimo, and we are very well known for the Serpenti. So as you can see, we have in our lineup a very interesting approach of this kind of topic, because we have absolutely feminine product. We have product that works very well, like the aluminum, for example, of the Bvlgari. It works very well on ladies, on men. And we have the Finissimo. Finissimo, if we have time, we can discuss about that, but today, it's our most important asset in male watches. Mm-hmm. So, if you compare with you, we have a totally different approach. Still today, we have high jewelry pieces, male watches, female watches, and we have the Bvlgari family, that it's more in the middle, let me say.
So I think we can all see that this is shaping up to it's going to be a very interesting discussion indeed. And now on to you, Aldis. Tell us a bit more about yourself, because you're a designer. You have that designer's eye. I think you are a watch lover. Obviously, we all know this about you. Your work in Hollywood puts you in touch with so many tastemakers, and you are yourself one. You live in a city, LA, that is highly progressive and culturally engaged. So what's your first interpretation if someone says to you, genderless watches or pan mechanism? What's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
For me, I think about the watch from the nature of its actual root, the intrinsic nature of what it is, mechanical functioning machine. So for me, I think about that. Is there a gender to it or something gender specific to it that would actually define it, classify it in a certain way? I haven't found it yet. As a designer, I've designed numerous different types of styles and different things, and where gender classification comes into play really is in the strength of the marketing as it relates to being an asset to the brand, right? So that's where gender classification actually works. You can see the metrics and you can scale out and say, okay, we want to keep making this type of product. It becomes more of a business thing, less about the product, more about that particular asset class for the brand as they're selling it to their consumer market. But for me as a designer, I design the machine, and I'm well into development of my own brand right now. I'm actually wearing a very early prototype here. And most people always ask me, the most common question I get from women is, do you design women's watches? And I say, look, my watches are, it's a watch. If you like it, if you dig it, put it on, put it on your wrist, you dig it. So I understand, both schools of thought, because I've had to design with the intention of looking at both schools of thought. But generally, I think that there is no gender classification as it applies to watches. It all comes down to the consumer and what they're comfortable with. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm just going to jump right in and hold you right there, because you just dropped a huge bomb on us. You said that you're wearing an early prototype of your watch. Now, you can't say that and not show it. I feel like, we'll just slip it in there, slide it in there, and hope no one notices. You've got it on for a reason, Aldis. Come on. Or is that something?
I will show it.
Is that something for the end?
When I can. I can give me a little sneak peek, you know. But
Did anyone catch that? Can we freeze frame? Can we do the sports slow motion replay and like catch that? Because this is, I'm thinking this is a world premiere, ladies and gentlemen. You guys saw this here first. But anyway, so
Exactly.
I'm not going to harass you anymore about it because, like, you know, acting a bit coy. But I'm going to seize on that word that you just, you know, has come up a couple of times throughout our introductions, the word genderless. And I think this is something that people kind of fixate on and really sometimes object to, perhaps without really thinking about what it entails, what it really kind of means, the full definition of the word. Now, I think a lot of us, there is a distinction between the term genderless and gender-free. And when a lot of people, they, you know, have objections to, you know, doing away with these categories, like, you know, we should keep the female categories, we should keep the men's watches categories. They think that because we're talking about genderless watches, that we want to make only unisex watches, that we're the politically correct crew who are saying that, you know, women shouldn't be wearing feminine things anymore, and everyone should just be wearing like uniform things. I don't think that's the case. What we're arguing more for is for a case of the gender-free watch. So they can be masculine, they can be feminine, they can be unisex. You can just keep making what you've made all along, just to stop categorizing them as masculine watches for men and feminine watches for women. Genderless is not gender-free. So I think that's a very important distinction to make so that we can have actual useful discussions about it, because when you talk about arguing for genderless watches, I don't think that's what any of us in this room want. I'm the last person in this room. I wear highly gendered watches. I have a tiny little reverse, so I have a huge, well, I have a Rolex, I have a big Panerai, I have a Mad Edition one, and so on and so forth. But is that something that you guys have come across in your discussions with in your own personal experience, when you speak to buyers, when you speak to clients? Do they have any opinion one way or another, like, yes, we should really keep these very strongly gendered masculine, feminine watches? Are they more sensitive, or is it a generational thing, perhaps? What have you experienced so far? Christine, would you like to?
So we are not looking for really male and female. Also, if you look to our lines, we have a Benno line and a Tefno line. We only use the word lady for one piece, a Tefno lady. And my experience is if you talk with customers, if you talk with retailers all over the world, so it doesn't matter if it's really a focus for men and for women. And in my personal life, it's the same. I'm a watchmaker. In Glashütte, we have 9 companies, so in all CEO positions there are men, and I'm the woman. And I think you shouldn't take care for this. So sometimes you have the feeling from the former times that women couldn't start in this position and to increase and to grow up. But nowadays it's more free, because we women feel free. We can wear what we want, and for me, it's if a watch is touching me, or if we create watches, we are not sitting and thinking about really men watches, women watches. So we think, what does a customer need? What does he want? You have to listen. Really, it's what each individual would like to have. And I think we have to create these pieces. And that's also a reason, because we do a lot of customizing, individualization of pieces, and not really directly now a male collection and a female collection. And if you look for myself, I'm wearing also 41 millimeter piece, and you could say it's made for a man, but it isn't. And also we created like our twist. We have one watch which we really created of a wish of a woman, because she said all the time, or the husband said all the time, if I would like to go out with my woman for a nice dinner Saturday evening, she is sitting there with fresh painted nails, and I would like that she is wearing not a quartz watch, she should wear one of her mechanical watches, and then it's my work to wind the watch, and because she cannot do it. And then we really had the idea, and at the beginning it was for a woman, that we developed a quick winder through the strap. It's our twist. But after we recognized that also men love this watch, and we had a classic design, so we also sell this watch to men and to women. So for me, it's like unisex, so it doesn't matter really if you really focus there.
There is a saying in English that what's good for the goose is also good for the gander. And what works for the, whichever side of the gender divide also works across the aisle both ways. And by the way, if you want to get a closer look at some of the watches that Christine has been talking about, please remember to pass by the Moritz Grossman booth just behind us in the tent. Moving on to Aldis and Fabrizio. Women, here's the thing that Christine brought up. Women can wear what we want, but men are sometimes, I would say, they're constrained from wearing something a bit more feminine. They can be stigmatized sometimes for wearing something with diamonds or even something like a quartz watch. I think people tend to take them less seriously if they do that. Fabrizio and Aldis, do you sometimes wish you could wear something completely beautiful and delicate and a little iced out, or do you still feel a bit like, like maybe I shouldn't because it's not a man thing to wear, and throw it over to Aldis. Go for it.
I'll take it.
Passing the hot potato.
So for me, when it comes to appreciating a timepiece, I just look at the art, the craftsmanship. That is for me, in all intents and purposes, where I start and where I finish, because that's how I design. I'm having sort of a conversation through design with people about construction, finishing, decoration, the thought process that goes into composing a gear train. That's what I like, So for me, if I dig it, I'm gonna rock it, simply because I understand how to explain it and have that conversation with somebody when they want to come up and talk about it. I want to wear something simply not to represent me as a human being, but I want to wear something to reflect my appreciation of horology so that I can continue the conversation, right? As it relates to design, I say for myself, I'm not selling to a culture, I am selling culture. So I don't think about trying to service a specific lane when it comes to the work. I think about making what is, for me, artistically, innovatively relevant and conscious, and I put it out to the world for them to appreciate. I'm not necessarily a diamonds guy, but I have seen a few pieces. I have seen a few pieces, you know what I'm saying, that are quite nice. My sister, she's a gemologist. My mother also digs into gemology and studied getting her certification as well. So it's in the family. So I get to appreciate it from a different side. I've learned how to appreciate gemological application when it comes to watches. Now, for me, I just like to be a little bit subdued, not be out there flashy, blinking and bling, you know what I mean? Because people looking at me. But there is something to appreciate when there's a flawless, diamond setting. The baguette's just sitting there, just dancing, just seamless. And you're like, wow, I can appreciate the art. Some people may say, oh, it's a little feminine, it's this, it's that. But that opens up for a conversation to be had, to say, well, let me explain what this is and why this is. Because your perspective is based off of something that you either know or don't know, you've experienced or haven't experienced, but you haven't had my experience. Let me give that to you. So I don't feel any pressure around what it is that I take on or that I wear as a representation. I don't think any consumer should. And if you're going to market specifically to a gender class, again, I understand the school of thought there, so I don't think it's the wrong or right. I think that it's a decision that applies to one's benefit as a marketing tool. And if you can make it make sense, then make it make sense. And but also you want to make sure not to alienate a particular class. Like when women started consuming larger watches, as it became a thing, a bit more of a prevalent thing, and people were saying, oh, they're buying the boyfriend's watches. This is the boyfriend watch because it's 41 or 42 millimeters. Like, no, because there again, you're pressing down the female consumer and giving them a label that is superseded by men. It's still tacked on by men and defined by men, as opposed to saying, no, this is what the female consumer likes now. So this is not a boyfriend's watch. This is, and there's not a women buying men's watches. These are women who are revealing themselves to be a different type of consumer that you have not acknowledged yet. So now it's your work to acknowledge and recognize them and then service them.
I want to, I really sort of, one phrase that you said a bit earlier on, really stuck out to me, and I love that. If I dig it, I will rock it. And I think that's an admirable stand that comes from your position as a tastemaker, and not just a tastemaker, but an educated, sophisticated one. But that's not always the case for consumers who aren't as mature or in their knowledge of watches or as experienced as you are. So, for example, I want to turn to Fabrizio now because Bvlgari is a brand that touches all areas of the world. Everyone knows the name; they're familiar with what they create, and I would say that. In a sense, you are sort of catering to a side of the male consumer that could be seen as more feminine because you also create jewelry for men. Am I right? I mean, it's not a huge segment, but it is there, and I really appreciate that because I think it shows the diversity in the amount of consumers out there. But going back to the question, what do you think could be done to stop this limitation of, women should only wear feminine things, or maybe, as Christine observed, it's not so much the case anymore because we can wear what we want, and I can see even in the audience that a lot of women are already wearing larger watches. But for men especially, I think it's very constraining for them. It's very limiting for them. They can't express themselves fully sometimes.
I'm honest. This is a thought that I have in my mind since few months. But the answer is, honestly, I don't know. I'm still thinking about that. I think that this kind of classification is a market and marketing classification. It's more something that's a part of the past. Honestly, in the future, I don't know if we are still with this kind of cage and boxes, male watches, female watches, eye jewelry watches. I think it's a matter of beauty. I think it's a matter of brand DNA. You have to be able to respect your DNA and to make an evolution of it each time. And you have to be able to add each time a different story, something different about your products and your brand. Everybody knows Serpenti and the Octofinissimo. Honestly, we receive a lot of requests. Special edition watches, special requests. We receive a lot of comments from ladies who love to wear an Octofinissimo. Why don't you make an Octofinissimo for
I'm one
ladies?
of them, by the way. How many women in this audience would like to wear an Octofinissimo? Hands up.
And this is something very interesting for us. We receive, every time that we talk with Octofinissimo in a certain crowd, the ladies, I would love to wear an Octofinissimo. Why don't you put an Octofinissimo smaller than this? So just we identified one thing, the size could be something that is polarizing, male watches or female watches, but it's not your case because always you wear very big watches. So at the end, it's a matter of taste. But we have to talk about beauty. We have to produce, we have to educate our friends and our clients. If you make a round trip around the world, you see that it's even a cultural matter. If you go in certain city, during the gala dinner, always men wearing a beautiful jewels. They wear a brooch, they wear a beautiful ring. So this is even something that we have in our culture. We have to, when we imagine the product or the future, we are thinking about which kind of client we have in mind, but we are thinking about which kind of message I want to do, talking about the brand. And after we start to make sketches. Unfortunately, it's not exactly this kind of process because from the beginning I start to make sketches and after I try to write the right shape, I try to find the right shape. But Suzanne, it's very interesting for me because I think that in the future we have again this kind of classification, male watches and ladies watches. Mm-hmm. I think that it's more important to talk about beauty, to talk about taste. If you love male watches, we have a lot of ladies that wear masculine watches, sport watches, and it's a part of the market, you know. But you have to be honest with you, and you have to be, let me say, You have to respect your brand, and at the same time, you have to try to make an evolution of it, because otherwise you spend time to design every time the same things. And this is get boring from our point of view.
So, Fabrizio, in your opinion, how would the world, in what specific ways would the world need to change before we can see a Serpenti on a man?
This is the topic.
My colleague Sophie Furley, editor-in-chief of Ladybug GMT, she's in the audience. She recently did a great article, you guys should check it out, where she interviewed men in the industry about
Honestly,
what traditionally women's watch they would wear if they could.
I think that we don't need to change. The taste will change. And it was 5 years ago, I was in Bond Street, the Bvlgari boutique. It was two very young men wearing a Serpenti watch. It was a Serpenti eye jewelry watch. I was 5 meters far, and I was like that. This is a very interesting thing. Why they need a Serpenti watch? My reaction was they are thinking something that honestly I don't know, and they need something that I don't have. So my thought was this kind of way to wear a Serpenti watch. And this is, for me, is the most important question. Is the Bvlgari way to wear a Serpenti watch? Because I don't want to make a Serpenti for men and an Octofinissimo for ladies. Now we are very happy because we have a very important watch for ladies. Is the biggest success in the company, is the Serpenti line, and we have a very important watch for men. If I start to make mix and match, I lose the client from ladies' side and I lose the client from male side. The market is not ready. It's not ready at the moment. This is another point. When you imagine a product, you imagine a product that someone put on the wrist in the next 5 years. Because the Octofinissimo, it was wow. For us, it was great. At the beginning, it's a different things. We arrive on the market and we make the thinnest manual winding tourbillon. Okay. The crowd was, oh, it's an interesting watch. Bvlgari now it's able to make ultra thin movement. That's it. The second times, it was the minute repeater. Oh, come on. Now they make even the minute repeater. Maybe it's something interesting. That's it, 30 pieces and 30 pieces. It was in a watchmaking exploit. You need 3, 4, 5 years sometimes to convince the market that the watch is in the product. I'm not talking about watches or chairs. I'm a product designer. You need time. You have to spend time because sometimes the market and the client are not ready. So if I start to make a Serpenti for men, that is something that I would love to make, and start to make some sketches. But first of all, I have to think about which kind of Serpenti. We have 10 different Serpenti in our assortment.
I feel like we're in the middle of a product brainstorming right now. This is a rare chance, ladies and gentlemen, to be in the mind of Fabrizio Buonamassa.
Yes, it's a deep dive in mine.
He's taking us through his creative process. This is a rare opportunity thanks to my watch week. Christine, I thought you...
I wanted, because I just got something in mind.
Sometimes
creative process,
no, it's fine.
you know?
I just got something in mind, and it remembers me 20 years ago, around 20 years ago, and it happened in Italy. And I really was surprised because we visited a retailer, and I looked at his watch, and he was wearing a small Rolex, a lady piece, and it was hanging like a necklace. And I thought, hey, what's going on? Because 20 years ago, I never thought that a man will really wear the piece. And then I thought, okay, it's fashion, it's Italy. Italy is a step forward in Germany. Yeah, it is. No, and after...
Let's not go into that discussion right now.
I think fashion-wise, for sure. And afterwards, really, I recognized that it was not only him, this guy. I have seen it so very often, and it was crazy. And then I thought, okay, why not? It fits to him, and if he feels good, then it's all right. Why not?
But Christine, you were saying that, yes, this was 20 years ago, and you thought it was odd that a man was wearing a small watch. But if this was 40 years ago, a man would be wearing that kind of small watch because they were that size, 36 millimeters.
It was the trend.
But also in Germany, nowhere you have seen that a man was wearing this small piece. But in Italy, it happened.
Yeah. I don't know.
But also nowadays, I think it's right. You have to look for the markets, and each market is different. And we develop some smaller, perhaps unisex watches, because Japan is asking for this kind, and they would like to have a little bit a smaller size. And in Europe, it's the same for women. So we really do not look, is it for a man, it's for a woman, it's really a unisex watch. And at last, I think each customer, he needs a feeling. The watch has to touch the heart, and then it's good. And we look more for the movement inside, for quality and all this, and high finishing. And at least it doesn't matter. And I'm a CEO, I'm a woman, and as we started, we created the first 3 pieces. And then I thought we have to do also something for ladies, because if you look around, and all independent brands, the most are in a bigger size, but we also should do something a little bit smaller, a little bit with jewelries. And what I recognized is, 10 years ago, each woman was wearing quartz watches. It was standard. A lady watch was a quartz movement inside. And then I thought, no, because also women would like to get in touch with high quality mechanical movements. And that was the reason why we started also to set up the Tefnut line.
Here's the funny thing that you reminded me of. People, whenever I ask people, like, oh, why is this a quartz movement in a feminine watch or a women's watch? They say, oh, because women appreciate the convenience of a quartz movement. I don't know about you guys, but I have never met a man who doesn't appreciate convenience more than a woman. So, like, why don't men have quartz watches? I mean, these poor men, no one's thinking of their convenience, you know? We're only thinking about the ladies. And what you raised earlier about, forecasting and being able to anticipate what the market will want, I think that's really relevant. And this is a question for all 3 of you, by the way, because as the CEO of a brand, as the creative director of a brand, as an independent designer who has an eye for watches, do you think that big brands or market leaders do you follow the market? Or do you lead the market? Do you wait for the market to tell you, we want small watches before we start making them? Or is that something, because people can't tell you what they want if that thing is not there for them to want, if you see what I mean?
So we listen into the markets. We listen into the markets, so we talk with the retailers, it's important. And it's also important to talk with end customers. And after you have to think about what can you create. And I'm also developed in design, I'm developed in construction of movements in all parts. And we try to develop something a little bit different. You cannot create a completely new timepiece, but we try all the time to be a little bit different, to think around the corner. And, but, sorry, that's my long COVID. And, but to go on, to create something special which fits in the market, and it should be useful for the end customer. It should be also useful for service.
Yes,
and at least what we now do, we recognized it in the last 2-3 years, that the question for individualization is coming more and more. And a lot of people would like to get something where the person or the customer can be a part of the creation of a watch.
Yes. Yes. Sorry, Aldis, you want to jump in here? Because I know you have very strong views on individualization. And also, I know it's 3 a.m. We don't want you to fall asleep. You've been quiet for a while. So.
No, I'm up. I've been enjoying the conversation quite a bit.
Sorry, Aldis.
What's staying up for?
I was like, this is my time to design. I'm on my computer right now, literally right next to y'all on the screen is a concept that I'm working on.
Like, look, there he is again. He's dropping teasers. I'm designing something. I've got a prototype on my wrist.
I'm always designing.
It's all about the buzz, man.
I live in design. Fabrizio, brother, if you want to get up on the Serpenti, like, holla at your boy. You know what I'm saying? I got some ideas and stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's what I do. Think I'm playing, I'm serious. But when it comes to the idea of the market, Yeah, I think you absolutely have to listen to the market. Now, how you listen determines the trajectory of your brand. As a conceptual designer for a number of years, my job is primarily to study the DNA of a brand, push that into a new digestible model that could sell, right? So you have to take into account a couple of different factors. If you are, as I am now, a boutique brand that's about to launch, you spend years studying the market to see what works. At the same time, figuring out how to define your own DNA and push it in there. So you're looking for a few different opportunities. There is looking at the market and looking for an opportunity that is not being addressed, so you can introduce something completely new, but you also understand what will get you from year 1 to year 5 so that your company can survive and you can maintain relevance, so that you can continue to introduce what you do, your organic DNA, in a financially feasible way so that you can continue to ensure the security of your company. Be able to make whatever you want to make, however you want to make it, and define your brand in a way that you can introduce something new to the market that stands the test of time. So you do have to take into account all these factors. I call it, it's like taking something new, taking something familiar and introducing it in a new way. How can I get you to experience this thing you think you know in a very nuanced and refreshing way? You think you understand watches and horology in this way? Okay, great. We all understand the base of it. But here's a new way to appreciate telling time. Here's a new way to compose a movement or dial composition so your eyes can dance on the dials a little differently, right? But where is my DNA in it? So you definitely do have to listen, but how you listen determines what your future is. Listening doesn't mean following. I think that what makes a great brand, any great brand, is being able to set yourself apart and establish who and what you are, so you are the trend. You're not following a trend, you are the trend. You are setting the tone, you are the bar. I'm a fan of, both of those two and the brands. For me, I love what Moritz Grossman does. There are so many things I look at, I'm like, God dang, this is such a superlative watch. You know what I mean? And then when it comes to Bvlgari, I mean, I understand the history there. No, really, truly, it's what you guys do is impressive, and your movements are insane.
Have you seen our last one? The new one?
Nice.
Nah, but I would like to see it. You know what I'm saying? So just like I said, get at your boy. You know what I'm saying? Holla at me. But the way that you apply innovative methods for construction.
Yes.
I think that's something I pay attention to most with your movements, which is really fantastic.
I think you've hit on a really strong point there, Aldis. For Fabrizio, I think what Aldis said is super relevant to what you were kind of contemplating about how to perhaps put a Serpenti on a man's wrist, putting the familiar in a new way, the Serpenti that we all know and love in a different context. Is that something that you kind of agree with? Is that also kind of in line with how you're thinking?
Several topics. If you follow the market, from my point of view, after 20 years in the company, 50 years old, the risk is that you are the last one. If you make a market test about the Octofinissimo, nobody can tell you, yes, it's a good watch, because it's so different from the others. About the Serpenti, it's difficult to say. Serpenti, it's our DNA. But again, it's a unique watch. You don't have any real competitor on the market. It's difficult to say for us if it's a timepiece or a jewelry piece. It's something that's wrapping in your wrist. Again, it's a bracelet. It's a bracelet with a specific head with the movement inside. Serpenti for men, I was very interested in this kind of moment that I've seen in the Bvlgari boutique in Bond Street. But I think that it's very hard to find a Serpenti for men. I think it's not ready, but I'm not sure that it's the the correct product for Bvlgari, honestly. You are not, you don't, if you are not convinced, I think that you are not to do it, and you don't have to do it. If Serpenti is a lady's watch, it could be an opportunity to make a male watch for Serpenti, yes, but why at the end?
No, that's true.
This is a more marketing approach. There is an opportunity here, there is a small niche, there is a small niche, there is a small niche. But you have to be consistent with yourself, with your brand DNA. Serpenti, it's a ladies' watch since the beginning. Now it's almost 100 years of Serpenti. If you have, you must have a very strong idea, disruptive. You have to be able to change completely the mindset, and I think it's very difficult.
We're about to open the floor to audience questions, so start thinking about what you want to ask the three of these magnificent panelists. But before we do that, because we started a few minutes late, I think we have just a few minutes left for one last point of discussion between us. There was a Financial Times article a few weeks ago, and I was looking for the writer, if he's somewhere here today. He's here at Dubai Watch Week, Robin Swithenbank, but I don't see him in the audience, where he interviewed a lot of leaders of luxury watchmaking brands, asking them how they felt about this very issue, about genderless watches. And someone from the watch world responded, a leader of a watch brand, said that we don't need to change, because if you look at places like Harrods and Selfridges, they don't have unisex floors. Why should we have, why should we do away with that lack of genderization or gender categorization for watches? Do you agree with this statement?
I think there is a difference, because if you go to Harrods, you need fashion-like, you need men and women floors. But if you really see in the watches, there should be unisex, because it's a question of taste. It's for everybody, should be each model open. So why should I make a part really only for ladies and one for men? So you really should have an open line.
Because it's all about that kind of knowledge and sophistication about the product that you're buying.
And it depends which kind of brand you have, because if you look now at Moritz Grossmann, you have to be touched by mechanic and by high quality finishing.
Yeah.
So if you are more interested in a jewelry piece, then you have to buy a Bvlgari. It's because Moritz Grossmann focus for something else, but you shouldn't find it not only on a woman's store or on a men's store. It should be for everybody.
And I think for clothes, we're all quite, I know that, for example, if I want an oversized jacket, I should probably buy it in the boys section. If I want small shoes, I can buy in this section, I can make those decisions on my own as a sophisticated consumer. But a lot of people don't have that approach to watches. They're coming to it new, and I think these separations or categorization, they really sort of put people in categories, which is not necessarily useful for to develop them as consumers.
You can make all the differentiation if you want. If I want to wear a ladies' watch, I wear a ladies' watch. At the end, it's my taste. And if it's just a male segment or lady segment in a different floor, I can jump in and I can take something in the lady segment. At the end, it's more our problem than the client problem. If I want to choose something for ladies, I will choose something for ladies. We need to classify, because it is our way of thinking. This is what we have in mind from the past. But I think the client choose the best thing for him.
Yeah.
But I also think nowadays with social media, with Instagram, and the younger generation thinks in a completely different way as I learned it 30 years ago. So it's changing and it's more open.
Yes. Aldis, you want to give us the last word on this?
Oh, the last word.
Last word.
I was just saying that I think I do agree that the client, we should give the client more credit in consideration when we think about how we market our product, and that they will find what works for them. And as it relates to our marketing has to speak to our truth as a brand. So if there is, a history of classifying, men's and ladies' watches, and that's what's true for the brand, and that's what works for the brand, and that's true. And that's okay, right? So keep up with the tradition, and because you know your audience, you know what works, and you know what's gotten you to this point and what's going to get you further. If you are a brand that is focused specifically on a different narrative. You know, when it comes to the idea of the mechanics and things like that, you know, myself, I'm just a gearhead. So all I think about is how can I make this thing cool and push it, you know, into the ether so people can appreciate it. Because when it came into watchmaking, most of the people who brought me into the fold were women who really liked highly complicated movements. So for me, it was natural to consider that women enjoyed high complications. And when I think about design, I think about it in that expanse. But that's what's true to me. So again, I don't think either or is necessarily wrong. I mean, if you take Harrods, then you're not necessarily talking about the product, you're talking about Harrods and how they deal with their consumers. So I think we're removed from that conversation directly, because we as the watch brand is not necessarily in control of how they push out or speak to their clientele. But for us, you know, the clients definitely will find it. We just got to speak our truth and how we directly talk to the client. And either or decision is whatever's right for us is right for us, as long as we stay true to that narrative.
Those are strong last words, Aldis. It's something to think about. Thank you so much. Now, audience participation time. Oh, James, first one up, straight. Gentleman in the glasses.
Oh, now I can see you.
Yes.
Finally.
All these beautiful faces. Go ahead, Jim. Oh, introduce yourself first, by the way. Just, or at the top of your voice, if it's not working. I think the microphone's not working. But I think we all know who James Darling is. Well, some of us do. But he's got a burning question.
Yeah,
and as a Rolex vintage expert, I think he's got something pretty useful to say. If only we could get him to say it. Well, just speak and...
Come here.
What? Okay, pause. I think they're fetching you a new one. That might work. Let's see.
Okay.
Finally we can hear your beautiful voice.
One thing we haven't discussed is that essentially the watch industry is a subset of the fashion industry. And fashions, by their very nature, change. When I started collecting watches 30 years ago, the most popular Rolex was a bubble back, which was 26 millimeters, 28 millimeters. And guys all over the world wore this watch. Shift forward 15 years. The first time I became aware of Panerais was when I used to spend a lot of time in Italy. I saw them on the wrists of women, not on men. I believe that fashion plays a much bigger role than anybody wants to discuss. And I'd like to ask the panel how much they feel fashion is involved in the watch business.
James, you can't say that here. The watch industry is so not a subset of the fashion industry. I'm sorry, them's fighting words. I got to state my point right here. I disagree with that, but I'll let the panelists reply in turn. Aldis. Just pass the buck.
No, I think there are certain models that have been boosted in popularity as sort of an asset when it comes to pairing with the fashion industry. But I think watches have always kind of led out in their own way. And I said it because I know a lot of watch collectors who don't care one bit about fashion, right? But they know those watches. Yeah. And there's a way that they actually complement one another. But indicatively speaking about what separates the two, I think that sometimes when you're talking about fashion, you have to think about the culture and the generation that it's a part of and what makes things kind of pop. As far as watches being led or defined by the fashion industry, I'd actually disagree because it's not always accurate. Sometimes it happens, sometimes. But then again, you have a lot of times where watches are actually at the forefront of culture and defining culture, which then defines everything else down, i.e. the fashion industry. You think about the idea of, most people thinking about what's hot right now. Okay, we got the Audemars Piguet, Royal Oak, we got the, the Nautilus. There's a lot of conversations around that. Of course, the Rolex Presidential, those were cultural icons for so many years and still are. I remember all the way in the early 2000s coming up with the Rolex Presidential, making a big boost in terms of the sports world, in terms of young culture, young music, things like that. And that sort of graduated into Audemars Piguet. So you see people making these crazy fashion choices, but they're wearing the same watch, and the watch establishes the value and sort of defines or allows them to make these crazy choices because the watch is representative of their worth or their wealth. So they can go and be like, look, I'm wearing this Balenciaga, this Gucci, but it's still the same AP or the same Rolex or the same whatever, because people are going with the value of the watch and the brand and what that means as a standard in the market. So I think there are many cases where watches actually lead the charge there. And you just got to base this a case-by-case sort of situation.
Yeah, that's a really great bunch of observations. One of them key being watch people are frequently not fashion people. Christine?
I think a little bit I have to agree, because if you look years back, then suddenly it was fashion to wear the bigger watches, a bigger size, and everybody started to produce watches in a bigger size. And suddenly came up a blue dial is nice, and if you look at our watch brand, everybody made their lines and models with a blue dial. And 2 years later, green was a fashion color for watches, and few years ago you had like a salmon. So I think the brands really look a little bit into fashion. Perhaps it's not fashion, but it's a color, it's the size of the watch, and it's changing. Also, if you look at clothes, so in the 70s you had
Plaid pants.
Yeah, pants. And they look different, and it's coming back. And it's the same a little bit in the watch business, but it's also, it's a generation, it's what happens outside. And if you produce you look and you listen in the market, but that's, again, if you talk with retailer, if you talk with end customer, they let you exactly know what they want. And each brand looks that you produce not something what you like, you should produce what the world likes.
Yes. Fabrizio, you're a very stylish man. You are well placed to answer this question.
I'm sorry, but I agree with James. The fashion has an amazing impact on our life. In terms of colors, in terms of fabrics, in terms of shapes, proportions, way to wear things. I don't care, honestly, because I'm not fashion addicted. But in an unconscious way, change our taste. Because everything that you see is an impact in our way to create things. So I'm not obsessed by fashion brands, but for sure, if they make all the same things with the same palette of color, with the same proportions, for sure there is an impact on our creative process in terms of taste.
But that's not necessarily a function of fashion. That's a function of the world that we live in, the culture that we have that influences both culture, both fashion and watchmaking.
It's an amazing impact even in terms of macro trends.
No, but it's not that fashion is influencing watches. It's that culture is influencing both fashion and watches.
The fashion influence taste, for sure.
Which is a product of our culture.
Yeah.
I was all right.
Fashion is culture, yes. They are super fast.
It's part of culture.
10 times faster than us. They make 10 collections per year. They change each time palette of colors and clients. And for us, it's something interesting.
All right. It just
we would love to have sometime the same speed, honestly.
It figures that just as the discussion is starting to heat up, we're out of time. But I invite all of you to stick around because I'm sure lots of you have questions that weren't able to be asked. So please stick around and speak to the panelists. I don't know if Aldis, you still want to stay on Zoom and chat to us. But definitely, I'll still be here. Fabrizio would still be here if you have a couple of minutes just to...
yeah, I'm here.
And Christine as well. I hope you have a few minutes. And I encourage you all to stop by their booths, their stands at Dubai Watch Week to check out a few of the watches that they've been referring to. Aldis, thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to just give us a little flash of your watch as a last? Come on. You know you do. You know? Hey, we tried. Thank you so much to all the panelists.
Oh, Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. It's
Thank
great
you.
to see you all.
Everyone, urgenzo. The popo is